Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have a terrific show for you today. Jessica Burbank is filling in for Bree this glorious Wednesday. Hello, Jessica. You're not here in the studio, which is sad. It's very lonely over here, but it's nice to see you virtually.
Yeah, I'm sad we're not sharing the desk, Robbie, but it's good to be with you on a Wednesday.
And somehow we didn't coordinate, but we dressed very similarly. I'm not sure what that's about.
Yes, we're very connected telepathically. It's a good thing we have going. It makes for good co-hosting.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we're going to talk about a subject that I can't stop thinking about, and it makes me so frustrated. But here we are, masks coming back in some respects, certainly back to the White House, at least for Joe Biden himself. The president says he's going to be masking up indoors as a precaution because First Lady Jill Biden has tested positive for COVID-19. Let's watch.
President Biden tested negative last night for COVID-19 and tested negative again today. He's not experiencing any symptoms. As far as the steps he is taking, since the president was with the First Lady yesterday, he will be masking while indoors and around people in alignment with CDC guidance. And as has been the practice in the past, the president will remove his mask when sufficiently distanced from others indoors and while outside as well.
Now, Fox News' Peter Doocy turned the heat up on yesterday's presser when he asked KJP this question.
President Biden is the oldest president in U.S. history. Why does White House staff treat him like a baby?
No one treats the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, like a baby.
So there's this book that says
that's ridiculous.
When staff walked back
claim.
What sounded like a call for regime change in Russia, the president, quote, rather than owning his failure, he fumed to friends about how he was treated like a toddler. Was John Kennedy ever babied like that?
So look, I'll say this. There's going to be always a range of books that are about every administration, as you know, that's going to have a variety of claims. That is not unusual. That happens all the time. And we're not going to litigate those here. That's something that we're not going to speak to. There is one thing that I do want to, because I think I was asked this question last week by one of your colleagues about this particular excerpt that they were referring to. And so I'll say this, we did see the excerpt, the context of the excerpt, and it seemed to be making the opposite overall point about how the value of his experience and wisdom resulted in rallying the free world against authoritarianism.
Now, just yesterday, the president appeared caught in another senior moment when he wandered away from a Medal of Honor ceremony before its conclusion. And by the way, it seems like he forgot his mask, too.
Yeah, he looked pretty confused there. I don't know. That was a senior moment would be the nice way of putting it. But, we're talking in a bit about what Mitch McConnell's going through with those the glitches, the freezing. Man, we're governed by some old people. Yeah, he left the stage too early. He didn't put the mask back on. I mean, it's a whole separate issue, but it does not. I don't think that sends a message that he's in formidable shape and ready for another race for the presidency.
Yeah, the president reminds us often, Robbie, that he is Irish. He's just a fan of the Irish goodbye.
Oh,
he just has
go.
Things to do, places to be, just gives the Medal of Honor and dips.
Okay.
Yeah, obviously, it's obvious by everyone's faces and just the flow of the usual ceremony that this is not how it was supposed to end. That's not a normal exit for him to walk down the aisle like that. You can see the press just turning and looking like, what is going on? It's very obvious that although Biden is walking away, it's a similar kind of a glitch to what Glitch McConnell is going through here, right? You have these folks in public office that are very old doing things on camera when the press is there, when they're supposed to be at their best, that make it very obvious that they are not all there. And Feinstein's another example of this. And with her, it was during a vote where she had an aide tell her what to do. What is going on behind the scenes with the president of the United States and the minority leader in the Senate? It's probably a similar kind of a scenario. If this is what we're seeing in public when they're at their best, what are we not seeing behind closed doors?
Absolutely. So with respect to the mask coming back, and I am seeing there was a report on a Maryland school is requiring masks again for third graders, various schools bringing back some of those policies. I expect cases to continue rising in the next few weeks, which might mean even more mask mandates, which I am extremely against, and I'm suspicious at best of the value this is really giving people at this point. We interviewed David Zweig yesterday on the show, and he talked about a new study that confirms the results from an earlier study he talked about, that really, if you're infectious when you have COVID, it's when you're symptomatic. You're really not very infectious or capable of getting people sick when you're not experiencing symptoms. So I feel like that should guide people's decision to wear masks a little bit. Obviously, I don't care if Biden wants to wear a mask or other people want to wear a mask, as long as it's not being required on others. But I worry that he's modeling that behavior in a way to subtly send a message that we are bringing back masks, not in a voluntary situation, but in a forced situation.
Yeah, I think we're also in this scenario where we're relying so heavily on masks because so many businesses have really bad sick leave policies. You have people who need to go and be baristas if they're going to make rent for the month. They have to go and work in warehouses that are quite packed and package meat or get Amazon packages ready to be delivered. There are so many jobs where people have to interact with the general public or many other people at work. And masks have been a solution because they expect people to come to work even when they're sick. I think a better response than everybody has to wear a mask all the time is if you're symptomatic, if you're sick, stay home. You should have the opportunity to do that without questioning whether or not you'll be able to make rent or pay for groceries. And so I think this is a problem that's partially caused by the greed of bosses not wanting to give their workers regular benefits. It's also a consequence of most people, 60% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. That's a really concerning figure, where if you rely on that paycheck and getting the full amount in order to make ends meet, that's a really concerning scenario. If you contract something like COVID, you can't just stay home and sneeze and cough. You might have to do it in an office, in a warehouse, or at a job where you're interacting with a lot of people. That's not so good for the spread. And so there's a lot of regular just workplace policies that need to change for people to just have a safe existence. Not only that, but for them to just make ends meet and pay their bills. We just had Labor Day on Monday, and many service workers had to show up at work to pour people's coffees, to make them smoothies, to give them their groceries. A holiday that was designed so everyday working people could have the day off. Now they end up showing up and serving the upper and middle class. We've got a lot of things backward, and COVID initially started to reveal these cracks, but I think now it's time to revisit them. Because, as you're saying, Robbie, it would be a lot easier for people who are symptomatic to stay home than for everyone to wear masks again.
Right, I do agree with that. I mean, a greater emphasis on please staying home, not working, not going to school if you're sick, and particularly if you're symptomatic. And then if you absolutely have to leave your bedroom for some reason, you put on a mask if you're coughing and sneezing, would be so much more sane than having everyone masking at all times and doing everyone having to isolate because you knew someone or you're around someone. It would just be if we could actually have these sick people voluntarily but encouraged to isolate. That would actually help, and that would just be a good hygienic policy in general. But the emphasis was never on that. It was on. I mean, that was asked to do, but we were all asked to isolate and do everything else. Well, yesterday, Karine Jean-Pierre used her time at the podium to encourage Americans to get their updated COVID booster shots.
We encourage Americans to get those vaccines. We know that these vaccines work, right? We know when people stay up to date with their vaccine, that works, and so.
According to reporting in ABC News, the updated vaccine rollout is expected to start in the coming weeks. Early lab-based results from Moderna, according to Moderna, show that these updated boosters generated a 9-fold increase in antibodies against the latest variant. And I'm all about, again, having options for people, and I don't want to do any medical gatekeeping, so I think this booster should be available. And if people want to take it, and if they want to, talk to their doctor and decide if it's right for them, we'll see if the claims hold up, that it is robust against the latest variant. Again, in the past, what we've seen from vaccines is good protection for the elderly and the immunocompromised against severe disease and death. So I think that's really important, and I'm not going to discount that at all. But for everyone else has had the experience with the vaccines in the past of getting vaccinated and getting boosted and eventually getting COVID anyway. Maybe there's there's a window of some somewhat strong protection. We know that it wanes. We know that's the case as well from protection from having had the disease itself. So, at this point, when Karine Jean-Pierre says it works, I mean, what do you mean by works? I accept that it is a good idea for a lot of people who have serious health issues. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong or dangerous or scary about it. I'm probably going to get it anyway. But, I fully expect to have a third round of COVID at some point, just like literally everyone else, because that's what experience has shown us so far. Where am I going wrong here?
I don't think you're going wrong anywhere, Robbie. I think that's a good approach to take, right? The vaccines have worked in the past. The science shows it works. I think having Karine Jean-Pierre, who is responsible for being the mouthpiece of the executive branch of the U.S. government, the highest office that we have politically, she should have more to say than just it works. I think there could be a moment there where she gets someone who is a doctor who's quite good at communicating scientific things at a layman's terms level. And they explain how the vaccine works and why you need to get additional boosters after you get the first one. I think that would be really useful from not just a communications perspective. You kind of have the responsibility to do that as a leader during a time where your country is experiencing a pandemic. But also, I think it's the smart thing to do given the current climate. If you actually want this policy approach of encouraging vaccinations to work for the general public and you want them to take them. There's been a lot of misinformation about them online. There's been a lot of skepticism that I don't actually think is terrible of big pharma in the United States. And that's led a lot of people to be fearful of getting vaccinations from these big pharma companies. Okay, so your job as the White House press secretary is to communicate why vaccines are useful at a level people can understand. It doesn't have to be her explaining it. They could get a doctor to come in and explain it during one of these press conferences. I think that would be really useful. A policy is only as useful as so far as it can be implemented. If people are afraid to take the vaccines, it's kind of your job, if you're going to encourage people to take them, to be able to explain why they're useful. I think that would be really helpful at a time when we see a lot of vaccine disinformation and just distrust in big pharma and the public health approach that this administration has taken.
Yeah, that would be so helpful. Well, we'll continue to follow that. We're going to do an Irish goodbye now. Are you a practitioner of the Irish goodbye, Jessica?
I'm an avid practitioner of the Irish goodbye. Robbie.
See, I was raised on the Italian goodbye, which is the opposite of the Irish goodbye. It's when you have to hug and kiss literally every person at the family party before you leave, from the babies to the aunts and uncles to the grandparents to like the statue of the Virgin Mary. Only then and only can you actually exit. So, more Rising right after this.